But we begin tonight with the secret U.S. war in South Asia, whose existence the White House prefers to not discuss with any specificity. Not the war in Afghanistan. President Obama very publicly rolled out the new strategy for that war earlier this week. And today, the U.S. military publicized its first offensive in that effort, called Operation Cobra's Anger, which is a very serious thing with a name so over the top it sounds like a Ben Stiller movie. Operation Cobra's Anger. The war in Afghanistan is, of course, all over the front pages. The key to whether or not we will ever consider it to be a success, however, appears to be mostly secret. A secret war that's being fought next door in Pakistan. The New York Times reporting late last night that the Obama administration has decided to expand the use of drone attacks in Pakistan by our CIA. The CIA is not part of the U.S. military, and no action the CIA takes is necessarily owned up to by American politicians. Now, for the first time, the U.S. government wants to use drones against targets in a Pakistani province that is outside the largely ungoverned tribal areas. And again, although this would be a big expansion of our part of the war in Pakistan that's been going on for a long time now, because it's a CIA effort, the administration won't comment on it in detail publicly. But we're also now learning that our secret war in Pakistan isn't just being fought by the CIA. It may be being fought by secret parts of our military as well. Jeremy Scahill reporting in The Nation and on this program last night that in addition to the CIA's covert actions in Pakistan, the U.S. Joint Special Operations Command, a secret wing of the U.S. military, is also operating over the border inside Pakistan. Scahill reporting that they're working with the rather notorious private security firm Blackwater to shoot people inside Pakistan with missiles fired from pilotless aerial vehicles, a.k.a. drones. So the secret war that's being fought in Pakistan is now reportedly being fought by the CIA and parts of the U.S. military and by for-profit contractors like Blackwater. It is a covert war that is escalating fast, and nobody in the Obama administration wants to talk about that, or apparently plans to talk about that. We'll see how long that lasts. Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Anthony Weiner of New York, Melissa Harris-Lacewell, Associate Professor of Politics and African American Studies at Princeton University, and New York Times columnist Nicholas Kristof. Thank you all so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
It's good to be here.
Let me start with you, Congressman Weiner. The fight against al-Qaeda and the people who support al-Qaeda, the reason we are ostensibly in this part of the world in the first place in such great numbers, it seems to be largely happening inside Pakistan. As a member of Congress, do you think you have full knowledge of what's happening there?
Well, we know that they're not in Afghanistan, and we know there was a speech and a lot of debate this week about our approach to Afghanistan, but none of it will be successful unless to some degree we either get the cooperation of Pakistan to help out on their side of the border or we do it. And apparently the administration has made the same decision that we've made for the past several years, which is we've got to do a lot of the work on the other side. In direct answer to your question, I can't tell you. I'd have to kill you. I mean, look, there is a lot that members of Congress don't know. We find out the worst things about contractors, for example, only after the worst things happen with contractors. We very rarely have any type of insight about what's going on, and that's deliberately that way by the CIA. We don't get the information very often until it's too late. But, you know, we're kind of in this devil in the deep blue sea relationship with Pakistan. If we either are going to get to some degree them to help us, because within a matter of weeks, if not months, the Pakistani government could possibly fall. And all of the best laid plans of the president, all of the best intentions of our military will be meaningless if we don't find a way to deal with that area in Pakistan that really is producing a lot of these problems. And that's the knot that we're in, that we are either going to go do this ourselves or we're going to rely on a feckless government to do it for us. And frankly, neither choice seems to be very palatable.
Well, the fecklessness of government is a big problem on both sides of the border here. Fecklessness, corruption, inefficacy, the challenges that they face. If the idea is to drain support for extremism by winning hearts and minds and by encouraging the governments in both of these countries to be seen as legitimate, are we not undercutting the whole idea of the legitimacy of these governments if we won't even admit to what we're doing in these places?
Well,
I'd say that for the first year or so, the drone attacks tended to undermine our objectives, tended to antagonize the Pakistani population. More recently, though, I must say that the drone attacks have been much more successful in striking the Taliban leadership, have been removing a lot of people, and to some extent, Pakistani opinion has moved the other way. So, I mean, there is a real trade-off there between our specific targets and our broader attempt to bring the population over. But it's, at least in some cases, I think it's been actually to our benefit.
There is a legal problem there that comes up, though, because maybe part of the reason that the Pakistani people are more into what we're doing with the drones is because we're actually shooting at targets that are picked by the Pakistani government now.
In some cases, that's clearly true. Baitullah Masood, they gave us the coordinates for. They repeatedly encouraged us to attack him. There's no doubt but that's true of some targets.
Here's what I'm worried about. I think that the legal authorization for us shooting people with drones is the use of force authorization after 9/11, which essentially said you can go after al-Qaeda and their confederates. If we're just now going after people that the Pakistani government feels threatened by, is it legal for us to be doing this?
Well, but people like Baitullah Masood they are in league with al-Qaeda. They are certainly threats to us as well. It's not as if we're taking out Pakistan's government's antagonists in Baluchistan or anywhere else. I mean, the people that we are targeting, I think, really are people who are closely allied with al-Qaeda, with the Taliban, and so on.
Melissa?
Yeah, I do think that this question you've asked here about not just the sort of 3 cups of tea argument about hearts and minds, but a central question here about how we are going to engage in international conflict. This very notion of a secret war, this very idea of drone attacks that, I think Americans are grown-ups. We understand that part of the realities of a complex world is that we won't understand every element of strategy, that there will be things that we can't know as a matter of military, but it makes me very anxious to hear a member of the U.S. Congress say, well, I don't really know everything that's going on, and there may be terrible abuses, and I won't know about them until later. To know that much of the authorization of this comes from a government which this administration suggested that replacing Bush's administration was not just about putting a new face on the same policies, but in fact changing how we engage with the world. I mean, this is a president who won the Nobel Prize for Peace in part because of a notion that he is engaging the world differently. So I think that it is incumbent upon us to at least ask whether or not we can be so certain that these are clearly our enemies, that these targets are clearly not harming civilians in an important way, and that we're not undermining not only Pakistani questions about the extent of their government's legitimacy, but our own.
Do you think there are big, profound political issues? Well, let me start this way. If our troops are in Afghanistan in large part because of what's going on in Pakistan, are there profound political issues about our democracy that are raised by us not really knowing what we are doing as Americans in Pakistan?
The answer is yes, but this is a mess that belies a simple kind of black and white assessment of, okay, look, they're on the Pakistani side of the border. Hey, let's call up Pakistan, get their military to go take care of them, and we stay on our side. The whole reason that we're left with these untenable choices is that we have governments there that are not willing to do what we want publicly, but want very, very seriously want us to do some of the things that we're doing. We're getting crushed on the Pakistani street, and the perception is killing us, despite the money that we're putting in there, despite all the great efforts that we're putting in there, because there's this disconnect. And by the way, the Pakistani government triangulates against us all the time. Oh, those terrible Americans who we just called up and said, drop this bomb. The point that I'm making is that we don't have all the good options. But you are right. We are dealing with this very vague resolution of force, and a lot of us in Congress believe that any further steps we take, we have to make it much more fine and make it clear what we're authorizing the administration and military to do. We're dealing in a part of the world that with so many dominoes that have to fall for the president's plan to be successful, that all the ones that we can control, we're doing our best. And then we have a large element of our effort there that are private contractors who we desperately need there. Those of us who travel, including the Secretary of State who goes there, relies upon these guys to make sure that we come back in one piece. But we don't know half of the things that they're doing for the CIA, and that is tragic for our democracy.
Okay, we're going to have to take a quick break. Congressman Anthony Weiner, Melissa Harris-Lacewell from Princeton, Nicholas Kristof of the New York Times. Don't go anywhere.